courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with Skyroof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Can you find love in your twilight years? That's what we're asking this morning. Broadcaster Ryan Mark Parsons and former Conservative MP Anne Widdecombe join us now. Good to see you both this morning. Anne, let's start with you. Is 70 too old to date, do you think?
70 isn't too old for anything.
Oh.
Everybody ages at different rates, both mentally, physically, in the sorts of things they like. When you say to me, is 80 too late to, is 70, well, we might even say 80. It's too late to find love. The answer is just look around you. Lots of people have. But let me say right away, no, that's not an invitation. I've absolutely no ambitions in that area at all.
Ryan Mark, what do you make of it? Do we need to stop putting a bar on ageing and dating?
No, I don't think we should. I think once you get to such an old age, you really should be looking for love internally. I mean, you should self-love. I just don't see the point at 70 years old to be searching for love at that point. I think you should go on a holiday somewhere. I think you should find love with the sunshine and a cocktail, perhaps, instead of looking for a man or a woman. I think at what point do you decide that you know, love is not going to come round knocking on your door? And I think probably at the age of 70, that is when you should decide it's time to give up. I'm 24, living in London. I know how incredibly hard it is to find love. I don't know how anyone who has wrinkles and grey hair at the age of 70, over someone like me, could perhaps find love. I just don't think it's possible. I think it's a nice idea, but I think it's not feasible. And also, I don't think there's any point at that age.
The People's Channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, it's 11 o'clock, which means it's time for tomorrow's newspapers tonight. Join us over the next hour to find out why things are about to get more stinky. Is Ed Miliband responsible for the steel crisis? The Guardian thinks that that is a right-wing conspiracy. And Americans come after our greatest Briton, Winston Churchill. I'm Josh Howie. Tonight, I'm joined by Aideen McQueen and Simon Evans to take you through Tuesday's top stories. This is Headliners.
There.
But before tomorrow's news, let's go to tonight's headlines with Mark White.
Hello there, the latest headlines from the GB News Centre. The government is confident that vital raw materials will reach the Scunthorpe Steelworks in time to keep the blast furnaces running. A shipment is already on the way and British Steel's operational teams are now assessing the furnaces. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner said the government was focusing on stabilising and maintaining operations at the plant.
clear that Scunthorpe was crucial to the British steel industry. That's why we took the extraordinary measures we did over the weekend. And now we're confident that we've got the raw materials and these furnaces will continue to be fired.
Birmingham's long-suffering residents are in for even more misery after refuse workers rejected a deal aimed at ending the city's bin strike. The Unite Union said its members voted overwhelmingly against what it described as a totally inadequate offer that still included pay cuts. Hundreds of workers have been on all-out strike for a month, leading to rubbish piling up on the streets. A very small military logistics team has been drafted in to help coordinate the clean-up. Newcastle United have confirmed head coach Eddie Howe is recovering in hospital after being diagnosed with pneumonia. Howe watched the Magpies' 4-1 win over Manchester United on Sunday from his hospital bed after being admitted on Friday. He'd been feeling unwell for several days. Newcastle have said the 47-year-old will now also miss the club's next 2 games. Volodymyr Zelensky has invited Donald Trump to Ukraine to witness the horrific impact of the war before striking any deal with Russia. He told the US broadcaster CBS that the president should come see the people, the hospitals and the children destroyed or dead. His comments came before Sunday's missile strike on the city of Sumy, now Ukraine's deadliest civilian attack this year, killing 34 people. MPs have found police were dangerously unprepared for the scale of violence after the murder of 3 children in Southport last summer. The Home Affairs Committee said the response from officers during the nationwide riots was brave and professional, but forces had failed to anticipate the level of unrest. However, the report found no evidence of 2-tier policing and praised officers who face violent disorder. And finally, Katy Perry says she plans to write a song about her space mission. The pop star's Blue Origin rocket blasted off from West Texas earlier on its first ever all-female mission. The singer joined 5 other women, including a former NASA scientist and civil rights activist, for the 11-minute suborbital flight. A short time later, the capsule landed back in the Texas desert by parachute. And that's it. You're right up to date with the latest headlines. We'll have more for you later.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for Headliners. We are going to give you the very best of tomorrow's newspapers with the best of today's comedians. First things first, we're going to have a look at what the front pages have in store for us. The Daily Telegraph has unions threaten to spread bin strikes. The Sun, Britain is broken. The Daily Express, they helped us retain our humanity. The Eye, China threatens British jobs over steel sabotage row with Labour. The Metro, look at the moon. Oh, my God, we're in space. And the Daily Star, I went to space and I liked it. So lots of newspapers there. Hello, guys. Lovely to see you both.
Hello, mate. Hello.
The weekend is over. We are back another week. We have a huge amount of news for a Monday. It always feels like on the Monday is when the journalists kind of get back after the weekend and they kind of only gear up through the week. But we're hitting the ground running. So well, Monday we've got the Daily Mail.
Got Easter next weekend, so they're going to have a 4-day weekend, so they're making up for lost time.
Fair enough. Got to squeeze all that stuff in, all those news in. What's going on then with the Mail there, Aideen?
So the Daily Mail says Lauren Sanchez, Katy Perry and one giant step back for womankind. So this is referring to the space mission, Bezos's rocket, where they came back and all these wonderful women had a great time up in space. And aren't we great women?
There's a photo of them there and
you can do anything.
They just look like they're having a party.
Yeah, I feel like putting these women in space, and I'm sure they're fine, but I mean, I have a second cousin who's in NASA, actually. I mean, she's so intelligent, like by far one of the most intelligent person I know. She got counted for being an astronaut because she has a few fillings. And then they send these 2 airheads up into space. I'm sorry. I don't like it.
I think Lauren Sanchez has some feelings, doesn't she? Quite famously caught the eye of Meta founder.
Yeah, so it's a very phallic symbolism, isn't it? I mean, they really have designed it to look like a
I don't think they redesigned it for the hen party. I think that's the shape it always is, yeah. He likes sending up these rockets with celebs in, and the first one, the one that I did enjoy, was when he set Captain Kirk up.
Oh, that was good, yeah.
I'm just struggling a bit. William Shatner, yes. Aideen was mocking my dementia just before we started.
Got a good story about that coming up.
But yes, William Shatner, he was genuinely impressive in what he had to say. He came down and said he was really struck by the extent to which it's dead up there, how there's just nothing, and how we have to, you know, it's a bit like Earthrise, awaken the ecological movement and so on, that kind of sense that we live on a very fragile, thin smear of mould.
And he hadn't been with Katy Perry on his one.
But these girls have just come down, oh, my God, there's the moon, oh, my God, it's amazing. Well, I agree with Jan Moyer, it set women's causes back by decades.
Lauren Sanchez said, the world is profound. We need to protect it.
The wound is?
Like she was a Year 5 poet.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And Katy Perry's going to write a song. So really, this is a step back for mankind, womankind, everybody, all of humanity.
I took a train here instead of taking a taxi because I wanted to save money and the environment, and these women are going up in a rocket. That can't be good for the environment.
No. So what's the big story, though? Bin strike. Bin strike.
Bin strikes. So it still runs on, and we have squeaky blinders in Birmingham, the little mice running around making a lot of noise.
They're rats.
They're rats.
As big as cats.
Yeah.
And, this is Angela Rayner sort of pleading to unite, Simon, that...
Can I tell you, though, I walked my dog Bucky in Hove Park today, which anyone in Sussex will know is a well-established and very well-kept park, and a rat, not quite the size of a cat, but certainly a good-sized rat, right straight across the path in front of us.
You think that came from Birmingham?
I suspect it did, yeah. I suspect it's a Unite envoy sent down there to start warming us up. I remember during an Edinburgh Fringe about 3 years ago, I can't remember, I think it was 2022, there was a massive bin strike, and so we were all living there during a bit of a population surge. It was absolutely disgusting. It's horrible. When you see it on the television, you have no idea how bad it is, because it's 90% of the discomfort is communicated by smell, you know, and just the sense of disease surging around you. It's disgusting.
And so they've rejected their offer, the latest offer, the council's latest offer. And I guess this is, everybody's kind of going to go, it's like the 70s again. It's going to be bins out and it's going to be stinky.
It is like the 70s because Labour are invariably and inevitably in hock to the unions that sponsor them and get them in.
But are they less in hock?
Angela Rayner specifically.
Well, she is,
this one,
yes.
Yeah.
But arguably Labour isn't as in hock to the unions as they were in the 70s.
No,
they don't get the same kind of money they got.
There aren't as many jobs, are there, as not unionisable ones. Yeah. I do think also, I remember one of the first stories we covered on Headliners, or it feels that way, was about the bankruptcy of Birmingham Council. This is obviously an effect of that. If they had any money, I'm sure they'd spend it at this point, but they just don't have it.
Yeah, well, is it more bin stuff than the Daily Telegraph then?
Well, the Daily Telegraph as always covers most of the major stories on its front page, and the interior is just sort of colouring in and so on. But, yes, unions threaten to spread bin strikes, and this, of course, is where the rats in Hove Park come in. I wouldn't be at all surprised if it does spread to Brighton. We've had one before. And, of course, anywhere where you have seagulls in the mix as well, it's 10 times as bad.
I would hope that they would eat each other.
Yeah, absolutely. You would hope so, but no, they just work in shifts. Peterborough and Sheffield are among the cities most likely to experience disruption. Peterborough, of course, not very far away from the steel works, which they're hoping they can keep ticking over on a low flame and just in time to get in the new loads of, I don't know what it is, coke, is it?
Coke is, yeah, vessel carrying coke.
Yeah, the real thing.
Bring it in, yeah. Not that sulphur coke. We've got some pure Colombian coke coming in.
It is a bit of a cluster mess, isn't it? Let's briefly edit myself there. With attempts to wrest control of these steelworks back away from the Chinese company Yingyi, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, with whom Ed Miliband was very, very cosy not very long ago, with only about a month into the job. there is now starting a bit of a war of words, echoing that which exists already between America and China, of course. They are saying that they urge the British to act in accordance with the principles of fairness, impartiality and non-discrimination, and to make sure the legitimate rights and interests of Yingyi are protected. The principles of fairness, impartiality and non-discrimination, which we as the Chinese have been assured the British are guided by, regardless of how often we completely forget about them in our attempts to, discard your industry and favour our own.
Yeah, I mean, the idea here is, Aideen, that this company had deliberately held back on the necessary coke to run to run
it into the ground.
Yeah. And so it would have stopped, and then it wouldn't have been able to be restarted again. And there's an idea that ties into a larger Chinese policy of making us totally dependent on foreign steel, certainly China being the cheapest. So for them to then turn around and say, hey, don't politicise this, when we're talking about the core of manufacturing in this country, it's impossible to not politicise it.
It's very political, but if I was a major superpower, this is what I would do.
Yeah.
That's what my uncle did when he bought the enemy pub in the local village.
Would he shut it down?
Rack and ruin. Yeah.
Well, the Chinese have been for some time now obviously working their revenge plot on for the Second Opium Wars, and it's going pretty nicely at the moment, I have to say.
Now we're having to import coke over here.
Yeah.
So there's a big story here about the NHS, which is quite interesting.
Yes, absolutely. Quite similar to the row that's going on at the moment about recruitment in the police. The NHS are fast-tracking ethnic minority staff into senior jobs. They want to improve representation, and they have a commitment to see people of various ethnicities matching those seen at scale in the population generally by 2030, so they'll have to get a move on by the look of it. And, of course, these sort of things, it's always a question of nuance and tone. Nobody, I think, would object to the idea that ethnic minorities, if they are going to be working in the NHS, should regard the top jobs as available, should they be adequately, equipped to and credentialed and so on. But there's always that fear that it gets to the point where good white candidates are going to be actively discouraged or felt that they're not welcome, and that I don't think is something the NHS can afford to do.
Well, I don't think it's going to come to that, but to try and encourage people. It's the same thing in a lot of fields, like why are there so many great black footballers, but yet very few black football managers. So they should look at why that is and help encourage them to go further, because there's so many people of ethnic minorities in the NHS.
And what if they found what those reasons were and they weren't the reasons you were hoping they might be?
Ooh, that is a question for another show. Kind of a debate in a different country, in a different planet.
It's like let's put it this way, black footballers are massively overrepresented in the Premier League at the playing level. So obviously they're there because black football players are disproportionately good at playing football. I mean, that's presumably why, right? There isn't some kind of racist movement to try and
keep out white people.
Yeah.
Well, going back, I mean, I care a little bit more about the NHS than football, just because it seems like that's my imminent future, is to spend a lot of time there. But representation, as Simon says, is not a bad thing. Of course, it's how you get there. What they're talking about here is social engineering. They're talking things like reverse mentoring, white ally training, which I love a bit of white ally training, to be fair. But what they're also talking about is how if you don't give ethnic minority a job, then you have to go before a panel and justify your decision. Now, that, to me, would suggest it could lead to people just going, you know what, I'm just going to... It doesn't matter if they're the best qualified or not, I just don't want to have to go before this panel because they're going to accuse me of being racist.
This happened in a very high-profile case a little while ago. I can't remember exactly. I think it might have been John Lewis or it might have been the BBC. It was some large organisation anyway, exactly that. And it led to quite a significant sort of court case, I think. And
obviously the NHS haven't learned.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's have a look at some of the stories inside the newspapers. Aideen, the Mail now, and it seems as if Putin, if he kicked an elderly woman in the face, it seems that the White House would basically blame her for scuffing his shoes.
Yeah, so Ukraine's Zelensky tears into JD fans for justifying Putin's actions as Trump makes excuses for the new strike. Trump was saying that he didn't do that strike on purpose, that it was an accident. And it seems that Trump, I think no matter if you're left or right, I think Trump is not a good moral person. And he looks at politics like it is a business. And he's trying all these art of the deal type schemes to get what he ultimately wants, which is a Nobel Peace Prize, because wouldn't that make the Clintons really upset? So he is doing this starting hard and then coming back thing, and he's just trying to seduce Putin at all costs. And I don't think it's good. I mean, I was listening to Sam Harris' podcast there, and he talks about Trump as being a bear. We just have to deal with it now that there's a bear in the White House and work around it. He doesn't...
Does he mean by that a Russian? Because that's usually the cartoon version of Russia, isn't it?
That's a good point. I think he just means a wild bear. He doesn't mean a gay man who's a bit hairy either.
Although that may well be the case.
Yeah.
But he's only got a 20% drop on the stock market, and that's a bear market.
That is a bear market.
Simon, 34 people were killed, civilians, on Palm Sunday at a church.
No, I'm not defending it.
No, I'm not, no, but the idea that Trump seemingly is defending it and sort of coming in and saying, "Oh, it was a mistake."
Well, I think
why is there no moral clarity here?
You're right. You won't get much moral clarity from Trump. I think Aideen's right. I think he does think of things in terms of the art of the deal or negotiation tactics, wrong-footing people, putting them on the back foot and so on. And it's jarring when you see it in the office of the president, who, however hollow their words are, generally speaking, sort of parrot a lot of traditional rhetoric along the lines of the founding fathers and the strong moral code and so on, and the world's policeman. But also, I think Trump himself has been wrong-footed by Putin. I think he was expecting to have made more progress at this point. I suspect that he is himself privately beginning to unravel slightly or possibly consider a change in direction. I will say, if what he's after is the Nobel Peace Prize, which, wouldn't surprise me at all that he would want that, but I don't think he can achieve that without achieving the stated goals, which are to bring peace to Ukraine. And I don't think, realistically, he's going to achieve that by reverting to 2022 borders. So I think there's going to have to be some negotiation. But at this point, I don't think it's going Trump's way, no.
No, I think he thinks peace was the Ukrainian surrender.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's go to another story now. The left-wing media blames right-wing media for blaming left-wing politicians pushing ideologies from left-wing media. In The Guardian, Simon.
This is the Ed Miliband thing you want to talk about? Yes, although we covered it a little bit on the front pages. But yes, it seems that there's a whole swirling storm. There's a maelstrom of different possible causes for the fact that British Steel has gone down. British Steel was on its rear end when I was at school.
For a long time.
Yeah. It's been a running joke, and most of British heavy industry, to be honest, it's already running at something like 10%. I think the workforce in British Steel has gone down. In the 70s, it was about 350,000. It's down to about 30,000.
So the two questions I've got for you very quickly are, number one is, do you think there is a right-wing sort of theory going out there that's been pushed that is Ed Miliband's part? And two, do you think that's correct?
Yeah, I think it's part of it. I think net zero has had a massive impact on energy prices generally, even though it is true The Guardian has managed to find a number of people from the UK Energy Research Centre and so on, the sort of people that Michael Gove dismissed as experts, but they have a point. Yes, our energy prices are tagged to gas prices more, and there are, I think, dysfunctional mechanisms that elevate cost, but also as soon as he starts talking about Britain's amazing wind resources offer the potential for cheap, well, that may be down the road for some time, but that obviously isn't going to come soon enough to save British Steel.
Yeah, no, exactly. And Aideen, what they also talk about here is they go, oh yeah, this is going to be the clean energy we've got coming is going to create a large demand for steel, for wind farms, nuclear power stations, pylons, all built by China with Chinese steel.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
But isn't the coal that is being supplied in Scunthorpe not suitable for the steel
industry? Well, if they did,
anyway?
yes. And, of course, if they did give this coal licence, it wouldn't... Yes, you're right. It wouldn't be the right type of coal, and also it would take years anyway.
And I think very possibly Brexit does have a role to play in this as well. I'll hold my hands up.
OK.
I mean, I've seen the full Monty. It was one of the 3 videos we owned in the 90s, so that's my understanding, is that British Steel is already gone.
Fair enough. On Sunday, 7 to 9 o'clock, is Free Speech Nation. Please join our live audience. Scan the QR code or visit gbnews.com/tickets. It's a lot of fun. Hopefully, I'd like to see you there. Anyway, coming up, we are going to check out the front page of The Guardian, plus a bunch more stories inside. See you in a couple of minutes. This is Headliners, only on GB News.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Anna, let's have a look at this and how do we tackle the work of one of Britain's most infamous white supremacists?
Yes.
William Shakespeare.
Oh no. That William Shakespeare, yes.
Why is he being? Why are some people saying he's a white supremacist?
So this seems to mostly be based on some research that was carried out in 2022 by some academics that concluded that essentially promoting Shakespeare, as they said, benefits the ideology of white European supremacy, because the argument is that effectively you're saying that this kind of culture is superior to others. But, you know, I'm afraid most people who read Shakespeare will conclude that it is superior to most things that are written. And that's nothing to do with him being white. That's just to do with him being a genius. And it's very depressing seeing this, but also the amount of time, effort and presumably funding is spent on these sort of projects. It actually, I think, does a disservice to the youth, to young people, because by effectively erasing or trying to rewrite history, they then don't actually learn about the struggles people have gone through. So it's a bizarre one.
But I find it astonishing, because this is Birmingham University that's done this study, or an academic from Birmingham University. Birmingham should be celebrating everything great about the Midlands. It should be biased. If Birmingham and Stratford itself cannot celebrate what makes Stratford and Birmingham great, because celebrating a successful British writer from centuries ago reduces the visibility of writers from other countries that had nothing to do with us in the first place.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to Headliners. We're going to look at some more front pages, starting with The Guardian, Aideen.
So, an urgent review of China's role in the UK Vital Labour figures tell PMs, we've heard that already. And then Forgotten War, alarm over the crisis in Sudan. So this is a story that hasn't gotten much traction in a long time, but it's the largest humanitarian crisis in a long time, and there's been a lot of inaction from global community, according to NGOs. So there's famine, there's been 13 million people displaced, 4 million people into neighbouring countries, and they're experiencing the worst crisis ever. So it's good that it's getting a bit of attention now.
It's good that it's getting attention. I'd ask why it hasn't got much attention, and I would argue because of Israel and Gaza. And no Jews, no news is the expression.
I understand that suspicion, that kind of possible tender point that you experienced, but it wasn't getting much news before October 7th, 2023.
No,
sure. To be honest, it never does. Sudan has been, again, like British Steel, most of my lifetime, it's been a dysfunctional basket case. Civil wars flare up and then die down, but it's not as if proper law and order is
very
ever
complicated.
restored.
If you try and read into it, it's very hard to get a grip on
So much of sub-Saharan Africa is. I mean, I was listening just to Radio 4 last night. Actually, it was Radio 3. It was to do with a Christian service from Berlin, I think. And Clive Myrie, anyway, gave a list of all the civil wars that were currently raging around the world. I mean, and most of them were in Africa, to be honest. I think Myanmar as well, but which I wasn't aware of. And there were at least a dozen in like darkest Africa, you know, as we used to call it, sub-Saharan. And I know Sudan is not quite, is it? That I think that's technically, I don't know, is it sub-Saharan or to the side? Anyway.
I like how you're talking about darkest Africa, and you also kind of dressed.
It's old-fashioned.
You're just missing the gun and the little hat.
Elephant gun. Just need a pink gin and a slightly roomy left eye. But yeah, I
Monocle,
mean,
maybe.
there is a reason why the wider world doesn't get involved. Because I mean, obviously, from a humanitarian point of view, 90% of those caught up in it are blameless, but it's almost impossible to do anything, you know, and you just cannot restore order.
Anyway, there's also the what happened to the plus-size model revolution at the top of The Guardian there. I guess... What happened? I don't know why I'm looking at you. What did you do, AD, to the plus-size revolution?
I think the thing with the plus size, anything, once it becomes monetisable, becomes popular. And when it got to the point that there was more plus-size people than healthy-sized people, let's say, they decided the pudgy pound came forward. It was like the pink pound, the pudgy pound. And they started really lauding plus-size models. But now with Ozempic... That's taken back.
That's it. So all they've died out. That could be the other option.
Well, all people have just realised it was all nonsense to begin with, and they are objectively not attractive.
No,
I mean that's possible.
Simon.
I'm just positing that.
Simon's just throwing it out there.
Simon, the doyen of which African countries get help and which models should be decided.
Simon, what's going on in the Mirror?
The Mirror, let's have a look and see if they're a little bit easier to play with. Charged, you bet. This is a court case which is brewing, so we can't speak very much about it. But Rishi Sunak's former aide is among 15 people charged over betting on last year's general election date. That was a story which The Guardian carried as well, in fact, not least because they broke it, I believe, or first accused them of doing it. So this was all great fun last year. It was one of a number of symptoms that Rishi Sunak's government had completely come off the tracks and was bouncing across the fields like a clown car. We will see what comes out of that.
What happens, yeah. I mean, you know, I made a killing, but the police haven't called me, so... Phew, that was lucky. All right, let's have a look at some of the stories inside the papers. More Guardian 18 and a new law that shouldn't give Hungarians pride.
So Hungary passes constitutional amendment to ban LGBTQ+ gatherings. Right, it enshrines recognition of only two sexes and providing a basis for denying gender identities. Now, this is very worrying. I mean, it seems like an infringement of civil rights.
Very much so.
LGBTQ+, it's probably the most peaceful gatherings of all. I mean, what's the worst thing they're going to do? Just break out in song? So are they going to ban Kylie Minogue concerts, Cher concerts? I mean, you can make a lot of jokes, but this is very, very worrying indeed.
Yeah, this is a real step backwards, arguably, Simon. This is something that I've been personally afraid of because it seems like they've conflated. One of the things that they're also doing is that they are bringing in this idea that gender identity doesn't exist. They're making it part of their constitutional basis now that there are only two sexes. And it feels like they're sort of tagging on the concerns with gender ideology and tagging that into the LGB, which is, of course, why there are many people who are part of the LGB community who want to break away from that. Because it's almost like they're using their concerns with the gender ideology to then allow them, it gives them an excuse to be homophobic. That's a concern.
Is it?
Well, I think it is. I think it's what we've seen in schools as we've seen...
I think you might have to go back over that and sort of tease it into slightly more coherent shape. I think it's fairly obvious what Viktor Orban here is saying. The Guardian say he sought to portray himself as a champion of traditional family values. Well, I think he succeeded. I think he is a champion of traditional family values. And if he seeks to portray himself as that's because he believes that to be a vote-winning position, then he's probably on fairly strong ground. I'm not saying that trans and LGBT are of the same water, but obviously it's moving in the same direction. It's not there's no fundamental disconnect there as far as
one's an inherent characteristic and one's an ideology.
Well, what has happened over the last 20 or 30 years in the West, first of all, you have the rowing back against Section 28, then you have gay marriage is legalised, pride becomes an ever more burgeoning, a month of pride rather than a single pride march in London. Now, you know, Pride Month goes on, and there's ever more lascivious displays of sexuality and police are posing with men dressed as latex dogs. And you have drag queen story. And everyone, I'm sorry, but awful lot of people see this as a pipeline towards degeneracy in the Weimar Republic, and they don't want it.
But
and I suspect, I will say this, and it won't be that popular, possibly even amongst our audience, but I suspect there are a larger number of people in the rest of Europe who wish their own governments would show a little bit of backbone in resisting the wilder fringes than there are within Hungary who are going to be afraid of this.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I guess that's that. You made really a simple similar point in that this kind of overreach into away from just the original core, which was celebrating lesbian and gay people and bisexuals. Yeah. There's things that are now people dressed up in dog masks or whatever it is that have got nothing to do with being gay. So it's
that's a bit like the Muslims who say that exploding yourself in a pop concert is nothing to do with Islam. Well, there's some people who feel that it is.
Well, there's some. Okay, well, there are a lot of people.
Bring a festival for you, Simon, and we'll call it Shame.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I think this is obviously a massive step backwards. But coming up, we are going to check out the front page of the Times. We're also going to find out some more stories inside the newspapers. Come back to see it all. This is Headliners, only on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays, I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. We're going to look now at the Times, Aideen.
So Miliband signed up to close ties with China on energy, a pledge to work together in a power grid. Ministers questioning relations after steel furore. So again, back to this story, and you have to ask, is it a good idea to get up to China? Wouldn't we rather be back in the EU cozying up with
Let's get closer, let's get more dependent on them.
We're damned if we do, damned if we don't. Maybe they should go for safe nuclear reactors that are well manned.
OK, that's fine. And there's an interesting story here about house prices.
So
everybody loves house prices.
Yeah, they do. The homes in parts of the north of England are selling almost 3 times faster than those in London, as the city faces a lack of foreign buyers and an exodus of millionaires.
Yeah, they're all moving up north.
So that's true. Personally, I just bought a house, although be it in the north of Ireland, but much, much cheaper than anything I could afford in Dublin.
Very nice. Yeah. Really, there is.
Belfast is, although I shouldn't say this because my heart is very Republican, but it's quite comparable to a lot of northern English British cities.
OK, fine. And then what's the Daily Express got, Simon?
Daily Express has not what you might say exactly a news story, but a sad reminder. The 80th anniversary of the liberation of Belsen, Bergen-Belsen, by the British troops, of course, on the 15th of April 1945. There's a large photograph there of what looks at first glance like the cast of Dad's Army, just because of that era, and a lady of 94 years of age, Susan Pollock, who was a survivor of the camp. I think these 80th anniversaries that we're experiencing now, leading up to VE Day on the 8th of May, will probably be the last significant ones that we have of these events. That's living memory, isn't it?
Yeah, living memory, exactly. And actually, this ties well into the next story. This is obviously one of the great moments in the war, the liberation of Belsen. Bergen-Belsen, and this ties very well to this Telegraph story, the awakening of the woke right in the Telegraph.
Yes, this has been a very interesting... For those of us who spend far too much time online, the Telegraph are a bit late to this party, but for the last couple of days, Twitter, or X, has been abuzz with discussions of an unusual podcast. Joe Rogan, of course, the world's biggest podcast host, had on both Douglas Murray, well-known advocate for Israel, but also very eloquent speaker generally of Western values, and wrote a book called The Strange Death of Europe, warning against the Islamification of Europe and so on. And Eton-educated, Eton, and I'm not sure if Oxford or Cambridge, but anyway, very well-spoken, what the Yanks would consider to be absolutely sort of pucker English gent, taking on Joe Rogan and a guy called Dave Smith, who's just a comedian who also, I say just a comedian, but has also hosted a podcast. And they have, between them, hosted a number of individuals, most famously or notoriously a chap called Daryl Cooper, who podcasts and writes a Substack under the name Martyr Maid. And essentially, and there's also Tucker Carlson has been drawn into this as well. And between them, these people have been accused of Churchill revisionism, which is essentially re-examining the extent to which Churchill's actions might suggest that he was spoiling for war with Hitler, that possibly some of the conflagration could have been avoided, that... Pat Buchanan wrote a book about it about 20 years ago, the argument being essentially that at the point at which Britain and France guaranteed Polish security, they were in no position to actually do so in real terms, and so were thus sucked into a war which they had no means of fighting when Hitler invaded.
Now, there's been this kind of Churchill revisionism from the left. Now we're seeing it from the right. It's quite an interesting phenomenon to see some of this stuff. Some of it's very ahistorical. Seeing Douglas Murray essentially take a stand. It was quite brave, I thought. I thought he was very sort of forthright. Did you see any of this podcast?
I didn't see any of it yet.
It was really impressive. What's interesting, of course, is to see the furore afterwards, where all of these...
It's been extraordinarily polarising. I don't think I've ever seen one where... and I'll be honest with you, I could see arguments and takes on both sides, but I seem to be the only person who could see flaws in Murray's stance, not necessarily in his argument, but in the points of attack he took, such as suggesting that Smith should not even comment on the thing without having sort of visited...
I think that he didn't say that he shouldn't have commented on it, but he just said, you know, you would know more if you were trying to talk about this and make this a point of expertise. He acted like
he was astonished almost to the loss of words by the fact that Smith felt he was able to speak on the issue without having... And I think that's dangerous, because I think you have to recognise that people have a right and perhaps even, you know, a duty to commentate on world events without necessarily getting an invitation from the government.
No, I think, of course, you can talk about something without directly being there, but he does have the ability to go and see this stuff, and if he's going to focus so much on it and make that his kind of calling card, really, then arguably he has a responsibility to do some direct research.
You're right, though, about it, how it is interesting, and it has been bubbling up for some time. And again, I wonder if it is the 80th anniversary thing, when you reach a certain distance from things. I know it's not quite the same, but there was a point about 10 or 15 years ago when those of us who read too many music magazines, there was a sudden resurgence of interest in the Beatles, which had not been possible in the 70s because Paul McCartney was still making slightly toe-curling records with Wings, you know. But once you get enough distance from something, you sort of get an overview of it. And I think ultimately it's healthy, as long as Murray says and others say, that people read proper historians and properly inform themselves and don't just go on hearsay.
Well, this is it. And, I mean, are you familiar with this term that's kind of being used now, woke right? Sort of as a counterpoint to the woke left?
Well, I suppose what they're trying to achieve in America is to justify their splendid isolationism and protectionism, and therefore they're showing Churchill is a kind of a warmonger and that they should have just backed back. I mean, it's far too complicated to really say what he is and what he's done and all the different consequences that could have happened if he had not intervened. Would Russia and Germany have just fought it out? Would the British Empire still be intact? I mean, surely an intact British Empire would have been bad for what became the American Empire. In the end of the day...
It's almost certain that America's strategic aims included the destruction of the British Empire and holding back until they didn't so.
So Churchill's like one of these people that I suppose he embodies leadership and gung-ho and people coming together during the war, and he's definitely not without fault. He wasn't great in Ireland or India. You could took a lot of his things he did very badly. He was probably very racist. I mean, he made a lot of bad decisions. He drank 2 bottles of champagne before lunch. But if you take him as the symbol of the war, and that has to be of some benefit, what really is the point of taking that away too much? It's the same for me. JFK is a hero because of what he represented for Irish Americans and Catholics. And I mean, Martin Luther King, he slept with a lot of women. But he also did some bad things. So, we have to look at...
I don't think anybody ever says that he was perfect, but the point is, without Churchill, the world would not be what it is today. And frankly, Jews would not exist. That's one thing that's not really...
That's one of the interesting, and I'm not going to state my position on it clearly, but that's one of the arguments. They don't try and sweep that away, the revisionists. They think that if Hitler had simply been allowed to drive east and not been forced into consolidating Western Europe, that actually that would have probably been less horrific for the European Jews.
That is just totally... That is absolutely ridiculous. This was his intent from the start. This was being proven. And I'd say that actually a lot of this woke right stuff is basically born of anti-Semitism, and that's why they've got an issue with Churchill.
OK.
That's... anyway, Awakening, let's go on to the next one. Aideen, The Telegraph has a story about the lack of male teachers. You should tell the audience about how you used to be a teacher.
Well, have I mentioned before that this is my specialist topic, my only thing in which I have a real qualification? Yeah, so there's hardly any male teachers. It's only about 25% of the teaching population are men. And it's interesting because normally there's this big race to the top for women. We need more female CEOs, we need more female politicians, but they never mention the lower paying jobs. And teaching is, I suppose, a lower paying job that men are not attracted to. Also, men are just not as nurturing as women in general. Now, my mother is a big advocate for male teachers because she just thinks that would solve all the problems in the world if there was only a few nice, strong men in charge of baby infants. So I think they need to reframe teaching for men. So instead of calling it teaching, they should call it mansplaining for money. And then they'd all get on board. But I'm not really in favour of forcing people to do jobs that they're not naturally inclined to do. My father was a teacher, but I think it was at a time he qualified in the 60s, and it was a job of great respect. Like, people in the local area where he lived would still call him master. Maybe they should start calling men master, and then they'd be attracted to it.
Well, Simon, I'd argue for parity when it comes to the sexes of teachers, and I would say that male teachers should be enticed with greater incomes. Also, I don't think women teachers should be hired until enough male teachers are there to be truly representative. What do you think about that?
You're approaching like the NHS, in other words. Yeah.
Positive discrimination.
I mean, I certainly think... I remember very fondly, I went to an all-boys comprehensive school that had been a grammar school until a couple of years before, and it still did have masters, so we expected to be called masters, and they were treated with respect. And it was interesting to see as we passed through that system and it became totally comprehensive intake, that those masters basically gave up and left. Some of them took early retirement. I think 1 or 2 found work in the private sector. It's a very different vibe. I mean, I think, personally, I'm sort of in favour, if I'm honest, of single-sex education as well, which I think would attract a lot more men in if they didn't feel that they were going to have to, operate in the sort of chaotic environment of the emotionally chaotic environment as well.
Toxic matriarchy.
But there is the corrective of actual research. Apparently, a 2010 study of nearly 5,000 grade 4 students, I don't know exactly how old that is, but I think about 15 or something, is it? Grade 4?
A bit younger.
Is it, that's young, is it?
8, I think. Or something,
OK,
yeah.
all right, because I'm now getting confused with the S's. Anyway, these students in Hong Kong, they were found no evidence that boys' reading improved when taught by men. No evidence that they learn any better. I think it's the discipline, though, is the issue, isn't it?
Yes.
Rather than the actual education.
Thing, yeah. Anyway, all right. Well, we're going to be coming back to look at the sun and the star, plus a couple more funny stories. So please see you there in 2 minutes. This headline is only on GB News.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. After the very wet weather over the weekend across parts of the Canaries, it's turning a little bit dry here as we move into next week. Still some showers around here, though, on Tuesday, but the main area of wet weather will be across parts of Iberia, France and Italy, where we could see some flash flooding in places. But for Greece and Turkey, plenty of sunshine here, and as we see at the week, temperatures for most here should climb into the low 20s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, very good evening to you. Here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Now watch out for some heavy rain as we go through tomorrow, particularly across parts of Wales and the southwest of England, but even elsewhere there will be some wet weather around. Now the main driver for the very wet weather tomorrow will be an area of low pressure that's coming in from the south, but even before that we do have a front across us. There's fairly persistent rain affecting some parts of eastern Scotland, northern England, Wales and southwest England overnight. We also have a plume of showers piling into parts of the southeast, and some of these could be heavy, possibly even thundery. But away from the showery rain, some clear, drier weather, and across western Scotland, Northern Ireland, those clear skies could allow for a touch of frost first thing tomorrow morning. But for most, it is going to be a relatively mild night because of the cloudy, blustery, wet weather. And that's the story across eastern parts of Scotland first thing tomorrow morning. But further west with some clearer skies, yes, there could be a touch of frost. A bit of a chillier start here. And across Northern Ireland, generally starting the day mostly fine. But a different story across much of England and Wales. Limited, if any, bright or sunny spells for most. And there will be a fair bit of rain around. The heaviest, most persistent rain will generally be across parts of western Wales and into southwest England, and this rain is going to pep up a bit as we go through the afternoon. We're expecting totals of around 50 to 75 millimetres in some places as we go through tomorrow and into Wednesday. That's enough to cause some issues in some parts. Away from the more persistent rain in the west, there will be a scattering of showers, also some bright sunny spells, and we should see highs in the mid to high teens Celsius. By Wednesday, the majority of the rain will have pushed its way northward, so northern parts having a cloudy, wet, blustery day, even some sleet and snow over the high ground of Scotland. Further south, it's drier with just a few showers here and there, but there will be a bit more showery rain coming in from the west and southwest as we go towards the end of the week. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Thanks for staying with us for headliners. You know my favourite. This is my favourite audience, the ones who stick around to the very end. I love them. I love them. And you're going to be rewarded with the sun. Aideen, go, sun.
Britain is broken.
How dare you say that?
I'm sorry, but it is. It's been broken since I was a child. Maybe you had 2 good weeks when you felt happy after Blair was elected, and ever since you've been just moaning all the time. At least Ireland has had the Celtic Tiger and Riverdance and a few good things that has happened.
Simon, 66% of the country think that we're going in the wrong direction.
direction? Is that China? Which direction are we going in?
I think just due north. I don't know. It's 66% shocking. I think that's quite a normal British kind of level of grumbling, isn't it? Roughly two-thirds.
I think that's a good sign. Britain is broken as always.
It's also exactly. I'm pretty sure it's exactly the number of people who thought America was going in the wrong direction under Biden. You know, and that's like the wealthiest country in the world. So you know, people just want to grumble.
Well, look, let's have a look at some newspaper stories inside Independent next. Aideen, obviously you should never really apologise for your jokes, but if you would like to apologise for your Chinese impression to the audience that you were doing in the break.
I did no such thing. How dare you? It was
Horrendous.
a perfect rendition of the Chinese national anthem. So, story now. Here, SNL issues rare apology to Amy Lou Wood following mean White Lotus sketch. So, in this sketch, which I watched, which wasn't that funny, they portrayed this girl as having a very buck teeth. And she said, no, I just have a small gap in my teeth. It's punching down. I have no sympathy for this woman. She's a beautiful, probably at this stage, multi-millionairess. I mean, you have to take the rough with the smooth, and as Oscar Wilde said, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. I get loads of abuse about my image on GB News for way less money, and I just have to chalk it up to experience.
She's very sort of pro her teeth. There's been a lot of positive attention about her teeth. It makes her seem more natural. She is very beautiful. I guess her point is that there was no real cleverness to that particular...
It wasn't that sketch. I watched it, but then all SNL sketches about it, and incomprehensibly, unaccountably, they want to bring the format over here after it's been wilting for over 30 years. It's ages since it was last funny. They have an amazing cast: Scarlett Johansson, John Hamm playing RFK Jr. and but they, you know, there's something about the format
but they've apologised. She said they got in contact, which you sort of...
Because I don't think it was the teeth she was worried about, although, I mean, she's been on Jonathan Ross saying my teeth are my fortune. I was teased at school, but now my teeth are great. They got the accent wrong and all the jokes just landed flat, I think.
Fair enough. Right, on to the Guardian, Simon. And if only I'd managed to teach my grandmother to use her mobile phone, things would be different.
They say that older people who use smartphones have lower rates of cognitive decline. This is just pushing back on the idea, which apparently has gained some currency, that digital dementia hypothesis, whereby we lean so heavily on our smartphones that we become demented earlier on. Because, and I do worry about this, and I have no idea where I'm going without Google Maps now, and you can just look up any fact that you temporarily escapes. You don't have to grind through the gears. You can just Google it. But how useful this survey can be, given that we've only had smartphones for about 15 years. I suspect that this might be jumping the gun a little bit.
I think what's happening is that we're not learning a new skill whilst always using smartphones, but older people are. My mother was brilliant. She got a smartphone. She's 70 now. Is
she alive?
She's alive.
OK, there we go. Story is proven. Right, show is nearly over. Let's take another quick look at Tuesday's front pages. Daily Telegraph: unions threaten to spread bin strikes. The Sun: Britain is broken. Daily Express: they helped us retain our humanity. The Eye: China threatens British jobs over steel sabotage row with Labour. Metro: look at the moon. And the Daily Star: I went to space and I liked it. That is it for tonight's show. Thank you very much to my guests, Aideen and Simon. I'm going to be back tomorrow night, 11 p.m, with Kerry Marks and Lewis Schaefer. And if you're watching the 5 a.m. repeat, then stay tuned for breakfast and have a fantastic day. Bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good evening to you. Here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Now, watch out for some heavy rain as we go through tomorrow, particularly across parts of Wales and the southwest of England, but even elsewhere, there will be some wet weather around. Now, the main driver for the very wet weather tomorrow will be an area of low pressure that's coming in from the south. But even before that, we do have a front across us. There's fairly persistent rain affecting some parts of eastern Scotland, northern England, Wales and southwest England overnight. We also have a plume of showers piling into parts of the southeast, and some of these could be heavy, possibly even thundery. But away from the showery rain, some clear, drier weather, and across western Scotland, Northern Ireland, those clear skies could allow for a touch of frost first thing tomorrow morning. But for most, it is going to be a relatively mild night because of the cloudy, blustery, wet weather. And that's the story across eastern parts of Scotland first thing tomorrow morning. But further west with some clearer skies, yes, there could be a touch of frost. A bit of a chillier start here. And across Northern Ireland, generally starting the day mostly fine. But a different story across much of England and Wales. Limited, if any, bright or sunny spells for most. And there will be a fair bit of rain around. The heaviest, most persistent rain will generally be across parts of western Wales and into southwest England, and this rain is going to pep up a bit as we go through the afternoon. We're expecting totals of around 50 to 75 millimetres in some places as we go through tomorrow and into Wednesday. That's enough to cause some issues in some parts. Away from the more persistent rain in the west, there will be a scattering of showers, also some bright sunny spells, and we should see highs in the mid to high teens Celsius. By Wednesday, the majority of the rain will have pushed its way northward, so northern parts having a cloudy, wet, blustery day, even some sleet and snow over the high ground of Scotland. Further south, it's drier with just a few showers here and there, but there will be a bit more showery rain coming in from the west and southwest as we go towards the end of the week. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with sky roof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very, very good evening and welcome to GBN Tonight with me, Martin Daubney. On tonight's show, British steel is on the brink again and the government stepped in to take control of the Scunthorpe plant, but still won't guarantee the blast furnaces will keep running. But Scunthorpe isn't the whole story. Where else does China have its claws sunk into Britain's infrastructure? You will be completely shocked. Also on the show, the NHS is running out of homegrown doctors, so they hired from abroad. And now it's opening up more training spots for Brits. But trusts are being told to give ethnic minority applicants priority for interviews. Is the NHS racist? And a record-breaking number of migrants crossed the Channel in just one day over the weekend. And meanwhile, Home Office is currently preoccupied with booking massage courses for their sniffer dogs. You couldn't make it up. All of that to come on tonight's show. But first, here's your headlines, and it's Mark White.
Good evening. The latest headlines from the GB News Centre. Birmingham's long-suffering residents are in for even more misery after refuse workers rejected a deal aimed at ending the city's bin strike. The Unite Union said its members voted overwhelmingly against what it described as a totally inadequate offer that still included pay cuts. Hundreds of workers have been on an all-out strike for a month, leading to rubbish piling up on the streets. A very small military logistics team has been drafted in to help coordinate the clean-up. Newcastle United have confirmed that head coach Eddie Howe is recovering in hospital after being diagnosed with pneumonia. Howe watched the Magpies' 4-1 win over Manchester United on Sunday from his hospital bed after being admitted on Friday. He'd been feeling unwell for several days. Newcastle have said the 47-year-old will now also miss the club's next 2 games. Downing Street says it's confident that vital raw materials will reach the Scunthorpe Steelworks in time to keep the blast furnaces running. A shipment is already on the way and British Steel's operational teams are now assessing the furnaces. It's part of efforts to stabilise operations after emergency legislation handed the government power to take control of the steelworks. Volodymyr Zelensky has invited Donald Trump to Ukraine to witness the horrific impact of the war before striking any deal with Russia. He told the US broadcaster CBS that the president should come see the people, the hospitals and the children destroyed or dead. His comments came before Sunday's missile strike on the city of Sumy, now Ukraine's deadliest civilian attack this year, killing 34 people, including 2 children. MPs have found police were dangerously unprepared for the scale of violence that erupted after the murder of 3 children in Southport last summer. The Home Affairs Committee said the response from officers during the nationwide riots was brave and professional, but forces had failed to anticipate the level of unrest. But the report found no evidence of 2-tier policing and praised officers who face violent disorder. And finally, Katy Perry says she plans to write a song about her historic space mission today. The pop star's Blue Origin rocket blasted off from West Texas earlier on its first ever all-female mission. The singer joined 5 other women, including a former NASA rocket scientist and a civil rights activist, for the 11-minute suborbital flight. After that short but no doubt spectacular trip, the capsule touched back down in a parachute landing in the Texas desert. Can't wait for the song. That's all for the moment. We'll have more at the top of the next hour. Now it's over to Martin.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com.